Good afternoon, and we're calling to order the Technical Working Group Subcommittee meeting of September 22nd. We are meeting via Zoom teleconference pursuant to the shelter-in-place order issued by the San Mateo County Health Officer, the Governor's Office, and the CDC social distancing guidelines, which discourage large public gatherings. Joining us today to help staff the meeting are Angela Montes, Roundtable Administrative Assistant. Michelle Rodriguez should be joining us soon. She's our Roundtable Coordinator. Jean Rydell from our Technical Consultant, HMMH. Kathleen Wenworth, Senior Advisor to Congresswoman Jackie Spear. And we also have Bert Gannock from the Airport Noise Abatement, and Linda Wolin from Supervisor Pine's office. We just a note to let you know that the meeting will be recording, and the recording will be available on the Roundtable website in a few days. Angela, could you please let us know which members of let us know how people can participate in the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Ortiz. For those attending on the Zoom video conference wishing to make a public comment, we will use the raise hand feature during the general public comment period, and for each item on the regular agenda, we will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. Written comments that were submitted in advance will be posted and shared with the membership during discussion item. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And with that, we will, I guess we don't need to do a roll call, but if you could just acknowledge the members that are on the call, members of the Roundtable.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have Vice Chair Sam Hindy from the City of Foster City. We have member Terry O'Connell from the City of Frisbane. And I believe that is it, but joining us from the airport as well, we have Berkenog and Doug Yakel. Thank you.
Very good. Welcome. And with that, we will now move on to public comment. We will open it up for public comment, and this is for items that are not on the agenda. And so with that, Angela, if you could take it over.
Thank you, Chair. I do see, so I will share my timer, and I will first call on let's see here. Lynn Israelit, please accept this request to unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to address something that really is not exactly on the agenda. And of course, I'm commenting for our group Sfo Runway Noise, which is still very active with 200 members who are still very concerned about ground-based noise. I know that you will be looking at a report today on your agenda, but ground-based noise is not really a part of that. And what I'd like to ask is what we've sort of been asking now for quite more than a year now. Will the new monitors that have been purchased and installed by Sfo have the capability to measure ground-based noise and low frequency or C-weighted noise? And if so, have they been turned on to do this function, and will this be measured and reported? This is still something that the communities of Burlingame, Millbrae, Hillsborough, and parts of San Mateo are still very actively interested in. And we would like to, therefore, know that this functionality is being taken advantage of and data is being collected. And we also would just like to state that we hope that the ad hoc ground-based noise meetings continue at a regular basis, as this has not yet been really addressed to satisfy the members' concerns. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Israelite.
I will now call on Mr. Peter Grace, followed by Jennifer. Mr. Grace, please accept this request, unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Peter Grace. I live in Brisbane. When Elizabeth Lewis was chairing the in-person technical working group meetings, she allowed the public to participate in the Q&A discussions. There was no one-time 2-minute public comment at the end of a topic. This worked well. One benefit was that key questions were asked at the right time, which greatly improved everyone's understanding. A second benefit was that appropriate follow-up questions were raised before the topic was closed. One agenda item today is noise monitor methodology. It cannot be spotlighted in a 2-minute comment with no follow-up questions allowed. I hope you will consider how a back and forth conversation can happen between the Sfo Noise Office, the members of the Roundtable, and the public at today's technical working group. This engagement with the Sfo Noise Office is vital for all of us. I want to thank the SF Noise Office for what they do and their support and help. I always have to remember 2 things. 1, the Noise Office does not create aircraft noise. And secondly, the Noise Office is pushed and pulled by many influences, including the public. To sum up, please consider relaxing the 2-minute rule for the technical working group discussion today. Allow back and forth discussion that includes the public. And let the Noise Office share their expertise and answer the questions asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. I will now call on Jennifer. Jennifer, please accept this request to unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Thank you. Jennifer Landesman, and I'm from the city of Palo Alto, a resident. I think all of the noise discussions are really interesting. And as you know, GBAS has been a topic. And a big concern is how the FAA is doing the NEPA, fulfilling the NEPA standard for quantifying noise. And as you know, the FAA models noise.
I'm sorry, Ms. Landesman, the GBAS is on the agenda. So if you'd like to hold your comment for after the GBAS presentation, that would be great.
Oh, I didn't see it. Yeah,
Item 1B is GBAS.
I will hold it to GBAS. It was more of a NEPA comment, but I can give up my minutes now and just take it up then.
Great, thank you so much.
Chairman, we do not have any more hands raised for items not on the agenda.
Okay, so let me just quick response. As you guys know, if it's not on the agenda, we are not allowed to respond, but just want to say, number one, that we do have a separate committee for ground-based noise that has been around for a little while. I used to chair it, and it is still scheduled to meet. I don't know the date, but it's coming up. Also on the questions, we do have 1.5 hours, and we can't go on indefinitely. And it seems like with the format we have, we fill that 1.5 hours. So unfortunately, I don't see how we have room to make it a little more interactive, because what happens then is it takes way too much time. So at this point, I think we're going to continue with this format, at least till you could take it up with the next chair. But I think for the moment, that's how we're going to continue. With that, we are moving on to item number 1A for night hush. Included in your packet are the previous, the Roundtable FAA agreed upon night hush departure procedures for reducing nighttime noise. We've been talking about this and having many discussions with the FAA. At one point, we had Congresswoman Jackie Spear a call directly and ask a few questions, and she asked to be able to have a conversation with FAA to try to understand what the 1 to 5 time frame was, how that was arrived at, and how we could look at it, increasing it. We had a conversation on Monday that I think was very productive. And so we are kind of back in the drawing board with FAA to try to come up with a different time frame for the change in procedure. I really do appreciate it, and I have our friends from the FAA on with us. I do appreciate all the work, and I do look forward to getting this implemented, because I think it's going to make a big difference for the people of San Francisco. So with that, I will give it to Fabi. Do you guys have something to update us on, or do you want to comment on what I just said and make sure that I said it correctly?
Yeah, sure, Ricardo. Thank you very much.
And Flavia, I'm sorry.
First of all,
Go
yes.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I did not introduce you, so if you could introduce yourself, I apologize.
Oh, absolutely. I'm Favi Garcia, the Supervisory Senior Advisor for the Regional Administrator, Western Pacific Region. And thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to say words regarding the night hush and the follow-up meeting that we had with Congresswoman Spear. I also want to acknowledge that the FAA is very appreciative of the work that we have done with you and San Francisco Airport, as well as Congresswoman Spear, to get to where we are today. As you mentioned, the FAA is going to be going back and looking at an additional timeframe to include the 12 to 1 and also the 5 to 6. But we felt that after the meeting, there is a commitment to go ahead with the 1 to 5. There's still work to be done to see how much we can expand the timeframe on the two ends of the request. There is also additional work that needs to be done in the environmental area. What I do want to acknowledge as part of our conversation was that should we be able to support the additional times on either end, we're still committed to the 1 to 5. And so if we're able to do anything outside of that, after there's an agreement and written request by you, the roundtable, we can move forward. But right now it's looking like, due to COVID and the depressed numbers, we're able to potentially do some more to do the operations beyond the 1 to 5. And so we're doing additional analysis that's going to be shared with you. We expect also that should traffic come back to pre-COVID numbers, we may have to revert back to the 1 to 5. So we're looking at all of this at this time. San Francisco Airport did take on the action to convene a meeting with the airlines because their input is also important on this. Oakland will be involved in that meeting as well. And, we just hope that should we be able to accommodate this, and it's looking good, when we are able to accommodate this, I should say, if we have to revert, that we still, continue to have the support of you, the airport, and Congresswoman Spear's office. So again, thank you. I think this has been a very fruitful effort, and we look forward to moving forward with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Fabi. So as far as FAA, do you have any other members who would like to speak, or do you want to move on?
I'll just say that we are committed to providing you with updates, and we're also looking at potentially giving you quarterly updates on the operations, the number of operations as they continue to come back. So that's something that we're working through internally, but I believe it's something that we can do for you quarterly. And whether we do it in the roundtable or here or through an email, I'm not sure, but we can talk more about that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That is very important. And I really appreciate all the work of you and your team and how you guys are committed to helping us provide some relief to the people in San Francisco. So I appreciate that. We also have Kathleen Wentworth for the Congressman Spears. Do you have anything further, Kathleen, that you'd like to add?
Thank you, Ricardo. No, I very much like Ricardo, we appreciate the FAA's commitment and engagement in the call, and they were very open to really looking at this in a new way, which is exciting. So I think I'll just let Favi covered most of the milestones that we're looking forward to. So I think that covers most of it. We just wanted to say thank you to everybody, and we will commit also to keep you updates, anything we find out.
Yeah, I think we had a great call on Monday, and I think that we really did move the needle. I just hope that we can get something implemented sooner than later. But anyway, appreciate everybody's help. Appreciate the Congresswoman's involvement. That's been very helpful. And with that, I'll open it to members for any comments or any questions that you may have. And I don't see, Terry, I see you trying to reach the mute button.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work that both the FAA and Congresswoman Spears' office is doing to coordinate this. And I hope that we can get those hours extended and move forward.
Thank you. Good. And with that, do we have any other comments or any questions from members? Okay, and then we'll have the public comment will come at the end of item number 1. So with that, we will move on. I think this will be, because we're doing very well with time, so we will move on. Did Michelle join us finally?
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Michelle. Good. I'm glad to see you. Okay. So now we're going to item number 1B, which I think is going to take a little bit of time. So let me go through this. It looks like a 15-minute presentation. SFO staff and the consultant on this is going to give us an update on the status of GVAS. The roundtable comments on the innovative procedure was included in the last few packets. After the May technical working group, I met with the SFO management and staff and talked about some of the questions we had. And so I guess we still have some questions about NEPA that have been raised. And I think one of the commenters who will probably comment after the item will talk about that again. So if there is some clarification on that, that would be really helpful. So with that, I'm going to bring it to Bert, Mr. Ganong, and Mr. Hanna from the consultant for the SFO. And I will hand it to you to take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. And hope that everybody as we are to see what we have to present with the new community flight procedure packets that were just added. And without further ado, turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. Thanks, everybody, for offering a few moments of your time here today to talk about the GVAS. I'm going to share my screen. Just a quick sanity check. Can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation that I've got up? Hopefully.
Yes.
And it is the right side of the PowerPoint, I hope so. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, these are the topics here that we'd like to briefly cover in the time we have available today. First, we're just going to quickly jump through some of the timeline here for the GVAS project, both for the overlay procedures that are associated with the commissioning and the beginning of our operation and the first phase of the GVAS here for what we like to call kind of gaining experience. The second thing we'll be talking about is a little bit more about the United Airlines flight evaluation opportunity that has not yet taken place just yet. We've got some updates to share with folks about what you see there, item number 3 for the possible noise monitoring locations, and just some quick updates on the timeline for that. The item number 4 we want to cover here today is the latest process that we are using here as a project team at the airport to track the really important and valuable questions that we're receiving, not only from people participating in this meeting, but also members of the public. So we're going to just spend a second or two to talk about where you can track our answers that we're providing and how we're tracking the questions as they come in our progress for getting answers to those. Number 5, probably one of the more important topics today, is to just quickly cover 2 new, what we call Group 1 innovative GLS procedures for consideration by members of the public. These are approaches that are attempted to convert the existing visual flight procedure that's been out there today for use by aircraft into San Francisco to runways 28 left and 28 right. That's the tiptoe. And then look at converting that into an actual instrument flight procedure using the GBAS initially. There's one other thing on here that is so new that I don't have it on the agenda, but we will talk about it, which is we are going to spend just a second or two reviewing the actual overlay procedures. The FAA very kindly provided to us copies of the overlay approaches that are going to be used by the flight inspection flight validation team coming up the week of October 18th. So we're just going to take a second to kind of dive into those and let everybody have a chance to see what they look like. And we will make a copy of this presentation, including those flight inspection graphics, available following today's meeting. So here on this slide, a little bit familiar, I think, in terms of the timeline that we're tracking and with respect to our engagement with this technical working group and other members of and other residents of the Bay Area. We're still tracking our goal of trying to identify the best possible Group 1 innovative approach procedures to request for FAA development by the end of this year. If we find that we need a little bit more time, we will take that additional time, but that is still our goal, to try to get to those conclusions and get recommendations, in particular from this technical working group in the roundtable, about which procedures they might feel are the best candidates to take forward based on the best information we have up to this point. One of the things we have added in to support that initiative is originally here in 2022 and 23, we believed that we might be making more short updates at the roundtable or here at the technical working group about how things are going with the GBAS. I think at this point, it's very realistic to think that we might have more meaningful updates, both to talk about GBAS operations, but also to dive in a little bit more detail about what we've been referring to as Group 2 innovative flight procedures. And those are the ones that we believe might take a little bit more than 5 years to achieve. And those are the same kind of procedures where we need to gain experience, both as an airport, as our FAA stakeholders in air traffic and the airlines, before we can kind of jump into them. But we've gotten a lot of questions and great feedback from again, this group and the residents, where they'd like to see where this entire project is kind of heading to. So we're jumping into that now, and we think it might take us a couple of additional more meetings like we're engaged in here today to kind of review what that looks like. So plan on hopefully getting a request from us to take a few more minutes here at this technical working group heading into 22 to do that. Here on the next page, just a very quick look at some of the very immediate things that are happening in terms of the GBAS project here at San Francisco. The first is kind of an interesting thing that's happened. We're very grateful to our FAA stakeholders and all the efforts that they're undertaking to help us not only commission this GBAS for safe and effective operation here at the beginning of December, but also to keep our flight procedures on track so that we can actually use the GBAS and start that process of gaining experience. One of the things that's happened along that line is that the overlay approaches, they are still going to be published on the 2nd of December, but they're running a little bit behind on an internal process to the FAA. So what that means is we had hoped that under the normal processes, those overlay approaches would be there on the FAA's IFP gateway, which is what you see here on the right-hand side of the screen. If you go to that website today, you will not find them just yet. And that's because the procedures have been what's called hard dated. And it means that they may not appear in the coordination tab, kind of with the normal lead up to the flight procedure, flight test and validation that we would expect with other procedures that weren't hard dated. They will be there eventually, but today we're going to spend just a minute or two looking at those flight procedures and we can take questions at the end today. Our opportunity for the United Airlines flight evaluation is very squarely looking at the month of October right now. Part of that is we need to deploy our portable noise monitors. We'll talk about that in a second. But just to be very clear, there have been no United Airlines based flight evaluations just yet. That has not occurred. Nobody's missed any data or any feedback just yet. And I mentioned before, flight inspection, flight validation is coming up in the month of October. That'll be an FAA aircraft flying some very unusual patterns in the sky around San Francisco to test out the GBAS and make sure it works the way you expect. So might have some interesting opportunities to see a very low flying FAA painted business jet running around the bay, checking out the limits of the GBAS service volumes. And again, it is still our intention to target the end of December for our making a request for Group 1 procedures. The next two slides I have are a comparison of, so the two on the left-hand side are the existing RNAV GPS approach to runway 28 left and the GLS runway 28 left. This is the flight inspection graphic that is being used by the FAA for its final development phase before publication. So the left two are kind of existing RNAV, and then the GLS version of that procedure for 28 left. The two on the right are the RNAV GPS Zulu for runway 28 right that is out there today, and then the GLS version of that approach. And on the next slide, I have the approaches to the 19s. What I wanted to put up here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, is just to share these with this particular group, and to allow everybody the opportunity to see that they are identical. They are the same waypoints, they are the same altitudes, the same glide path angles. So the ones that are circled in red, those are the GLS versions that'll come online on the 2nd of December. We encourage everybody to take a few moments after today to look at these more closely and come to the same conclusions that we have, that the FAA has indeed stuck to an identical overlay. page 6, these are the same comparison, but for the approaches to the 19s. There is one difference that a keen observer will notice on these, and it relates to the missed approaches. And I think we've briefed this technical working group in the past about the possibility that there were some changes to the missed approaches to the 19s that the FAA is working on to kind of enhance the safety and efficiency of closely spaced parallel runway operations to the 19s specifically, which only get used in a southeast flow operation here at the airport. So what you'll notice here is, as an example here on the far left-hand side of this page, the current missed approach to 19 right, basically just flies to an altitude and makes a nice direct turn to a hold. The one that's going to be coming along with the GLS is what the FAA would like to change all the other missed approach procedures for the existing ILS and RNAV to follow, which is where the aircraft climbs to an altitude, but now climbs to a specific point to basically build up more separation between aircraft. The reality of the situation for missed approaches here at San Francisco, as many of you may have heard before, is that any aircraft that might have to execute a missed approach or bulk landing is actually going to receive vectors from air traffic immediately. So a lot of these missed approach procedures, even though they show a nice track, they don't get used very frequently. So just want to make sure folks are aware of this. And I'll move along. Here, just talking about the United Airlines flight evaluation opportunity, I just want to say it is still our intention to work with United very closely to perform this. The airport is currently working with United to identify different aircraft and dates and times of availability to perform the evaluation. But all of that needs to take place when the noise monitors are deployed. So United is ready to go, and we're just trying to finalize the best remaining locations for monitors. And that's here on slide 8. So the last time we presented, we were looking for some feedback from this particular technical working group and other residents about the best possible locations. And since we last came, we have been able to make some decisions about really great locations, we think, to capture the noise of that United aircraft when it flies over, but also to gather other noise information for kind of the existing state of operations out there and to collect background noise so that we have a baseline to establish. So we've identified the locations A, B, C, and F. C is actually a new location that's different than the one we presented last time, and it's a private residence. And so just for general perspective, it's near Arrastradero and Donald Drive, kind of in between two schools here. We are still seeking 2 additional locations to build up the most uniform kind of distribution of noise monitors at D and E. Bert, I just wanted to quickly pass the microphone to you. Is there anything else that you wanted to add in about sites D and E and what we're looking for?
Thank you, Paul. No, right now we're firm with A, B, C, F. D and E are the 2 that would be good fillers. If we don't get them or we can't secure locations in those areas, we'll just proceed with B, C, A, B, C, and F.
Great. Thanks for the additional insight there. So the next thing we wanted to brief was how our project team is tracking the questions and answers from the public. And I think we presented a little bit of this at a different public workshop, but we wanted to make sure we spent a moment or 2 here to brief this technical working group and all of your members and participants about how, again, the same concept here. So we have created a specific section of the noise.flysfo.com website, which is where we're kind of containing all of our GBAS information. And what we're doing is we're both tracking the questions as they come in, and these could be questions that come in through the sfo.gbas@flysfo.com, email that's being monitored. So as questions come in directly, we gather them. We post the question as soon as possible, along with the date and the method that it was sent to us. We also are taking verbal questions that are raised here during the technical working group, during the several minutes of response, or if it's a member question, we do our best to record it faithfully and then post it here. We also gather those questions that are submitted electronically in advance of meetings like the one today and post them as well. And then what we're using is kind of a color coding system to identify the status of what's happening kind of on the project team side to come up with an answer to the question that is, appropriate and accurate to the best of our ability. And so what we're doing is a green field here is what we believe is a completed question, which you would then at that point see an answer. And then we have kind of different percentages of a pie shape that kind of indicates how many different groups within the project team have had a chance to review the question. So if it's a very technical question, we may have kind of our technical answers first, and then we have other members of our team that do a great job distilling some of that very technical information down into something that's maybe a bit more consumable, I think, on a web page like this one. So we can track the progress of to identify the questions being looked at, and it's preparing to be answered. So this is there. And the other topic I think we wanted to cover for today is the community flight procedure packages themselves. And as Bert mentioned at the very beginning of our briefing here today, we have added 2 new community flight procedure packages for what we're calling the GLS Tango Tango, or TIPTOE. That's kind of the abbreviation that we're using for it. And I'm going to talk about what that looks like here in just a second, but I did just want to point out, so we now have a total of 14 community flight procedure packages, and that includes the 2 new procedures, the 2 new CFPPs for the TIPTOE. You did hear me speak a little bit about our plan to start looking at Group 2 procedures. It may not be that we use the community flight procedure package to talk about Group 2 procedures just yet, but it is our plan to actually address those and some of those concepts here at the next technical working group meeting. Before I get into huge detail on the GLS Tango Tango and our conversion, I just want to remind folks that I'm clicking on the link directly from the PowerPoint presentation, and that takes us to, I'm in my web browser now. Hopefully everybody can still see this. I'm on the noise.flysfo.com website, and I'm in particular on this tab right here for the GBAS. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, because there's a lot of CFPPs now, you'll see the 2 newest ones that have been added just today. One of them is the Tango Tango for 28 right. The other one is the Tango Tango for 28 left. And similar to all the other community flight procedure packages that we've created, we have the PDF version, which looks something like this. So I'm not going to dive through this in a lot of detail. And we have the graphical version, if kind of the mapping based version, so folks can zoom in a little bit more closely. What you'll notice right away is that our community flight procedure package for the TIPTOE conversion, or the conversion of the visual flight procedure of the TIPTOE into a possible instrument approach procedure, we don't have any green or purple areas, because the way that we're currently thinking about converting this particular procedure would result in aircraft flying it as an IFR procedure the same way that it's being flown as a VFR procedure. So we aren't anticipating any changes to noise. But one of the most important aspects about why we're looking at this as a, I'm just going to go to this last slide that we have here. One of the reasons we're looking at this is we understand that, this existing visual flight procedure does have some of the kind of better, or what we believe to be better, minimum altitudes at the beginning of the approach procedure in particular. And so, converting this one directly may just enable more aircraft that could fly this as a GLS approach to basically take advantage of that quieter profile coming into the airport. There is another advantage to making an instrument procedure that replicates a visual flight procedure, which is that we understand there are some airlines today that fly into San Francisco that do not or cannot use a charted visual flight procedure, either because they choose not to load it into their navigation databases, or they just don't particularly train it. So the feedback we've gotten is that if we have the opportunity to convert this one into a GLS procedure, it might enable additional airlines to start using this approach and take advantage of that slightly noise friendlier profile kind of in the beginning. It also helps for looking at some of our Group 2 concepts where we're thinking about possible opportunities for dispersion. So that's all we had prepared for today. Again, I just really appreciate everybody taking a few moments to review the latest on the GBAS project. And I'll stop there and open things up for questions. Sorry, Ricardo, you may be on mute.
I was saying some great stuff too. I just said, thank you, Mr. Hanna, for your information. Like always, is very informative. So with that, I will open it for my colleagues to see if you have any questions. No questions. Okay.
Sam Handy had his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam. Please go ahead.
Thank
Vice
you.
Chair Handy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hanna, for your presentation. I got a couple questions for you. On your presentation under the overlay approach comparison. Looking at the first one, 28 left on the new one, I see on the top left, there is simultaneous approach authorized, simultaneous operations require use of vertical guidance, etc. Could you talk a little bit about this? Because this seems like different from the current RNAV procedure.
So that is an extremely keen observation, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. So one of the intentions for these GLS overlays of the existing RNAV approaches is to get them added into an air traffic order called the 7110.308. And the .308 order enables closely spaced parallel runway operations. Today, on the 28 left and 28 right, the only approaches that are authorized for simultaneous usage are the ILSs. By introducing the GLS approaches, which have the same kind of navigational precision as the ILSs do, this will enable that .308 order to be updated to include GLSs for the 28s specifically. So today it's just ILS. After the 2nd of December, and once the FAA is ready to update that .308 order to add in authorization for the GLSs, then it will be possible for aircraft and air traffic to basically use an ILS-GLS combination or a GLS-GLS combination, or stay with the ILS-ILS combination. So that's why those notes appear on the GLS pages and not the RNAV approaches. The RNAV approaches at the moment have not been, either they have been evaluated by the FAA and they decided not to put them into the .308, or they haven't been evaluated because certain navigation methods don't have the precision necessary.
Okay, thank you. So then am I right to conclude that will relieve a lot of the delays, because you're going to have dual approaches most of the time compared to single approach, or not necessarily?
Well, that's a great question as well. The closely spaced parallel runway operation to the 28s it's only used under very specific kind of weather conditions at the airport. So on a given basis, I think we got a great discussion about this in the Northern California Airspace Workshop. Normal day-to-day operations, when the weather's good, they're actually using a different separation method under visual flight rules that allows the airport to get in as many aircraft as possible, as safely as they can. Under kind of this very specific band of IFR conditions, where the clouds get a little bit lower. Yeah, not a complete fog situation, but definitely not clear in a million visibility. That's when the closely spaced parallel runway operation comes into use. So in those particular time periods, it's possible that more aircraft and that the ability to use that increases a little bit, especially during construction. That's actually going to be a bit of an advantage for the airport, but it's really just a very narrow window for that .308 Casper operation where we expect a benefit.
Very good. Thank you so much. And my final question, if I may, thus far, looking at your project goals, obviously, number one is noise reduction. With these overlays that are being studied at this point, and waiting obviously for United Airlines to run them and see how that goes in real life, are you comfortable at this point that you will meet that objective by reducing the airplane noise?
That's a great question as well. And we're just as interested in seeing the results of the United Airlines flight evaluation portable noise monitors as well to verify that our kind of so far simulated results, and the simulated results do suggest that there could be some noise benefits. But to be very explicit to your question, we are not anticipating any noise benefit, over what's out there today necessarily for any procedure that's like an identical overlay. So the 4 that are coming out on the 2nd of December, we don't expect any change relative to the noise situation for those 4 approaches. Some of the innovative Group 1 approach procedures, we are finding that there could be a benefit, and that's what we want to validate with the United flight. The one that I think everybody has very high confidence on right now, just to give one example, is the GLS DB, or down the bay approach. And in that particular situation, I think the residents, at least when that approach has been flown under vectors, we tend not to get as many kind of historical noise complaints. So I think there's a great deal of hope and confidence that that particular procedure will deliver some potential noise benefits, if nothing else, because it will codify the path and enable more aircraft to potentially come down the bay instead of relying on vectors for that. So I hope that answers your question.
It did. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Hindi. With that, let's go back. We did have our consultant, HMMH, review some of the comments on GLS overlay and the previous measurement locations. And so I would like to have our Gene Rydell just give us his take on that and see if there's any questions or any further clarification that we need from Mr. Hanna.
And I would like to point out, Chair, that Ms. Wentworth had a second to call on her.
Okay, Kathleen, I'll be right back with you. So, Gene, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So we had proposed, or we had provided some comments back. Based on your presentation today, I just want to make some clarifications and maybe additional questions, but the schedule doesn't show necessarily the noise measurements, but the noise measurements I'm assuming would be in place in time for the United flight testing to occur. So they would be out during the flight testing, and then you would be able to compare the United flights that were using the GBAS versus all the other flights that were not. Is that correct?
That'd be correct. We do plan to have the monitors that start going out late this week and then the next week. And then that way we'll be able to capture the baseline noise as well as the GBAS.
Okay. And then our other questions, if they were questions, were in regard to the potential noise measurement sites. We had noticed that some were very close to each other, and it appears now that it's a pretty good separation, almost an equal separation among I think it's 5 sites now. And so thank you for that. And I'm sure that some of them, one of the questions we wanted to address is some of the spacing due to, where the application of speed brakes may be required on some of the procedures, because we are concerned with the application of speed brakes. So, but I do think that now that we have a more consistent distance between the sites, that you don't know exactly where that's going to be applied, so you can't just put a measurement where you think it will be applied. Could you just please address that concern as well?
That's very correct, Gene. We wanted to be sure that we were able to capture any events like that, any anomalies, anything that might be different. And the more sites you have out there with a decent spread on them, you're able to capture things like that, as you well know.
Okay, thanks for that, Bert. And I would contend then that I think you have adequately addressed the concerns that we raised, and they have been addressed in your presentation. So thank you for that opportunity.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rydell. And I'm going to go to Ms. Wentworth with Congressman Jackie Spears' office. Ms. Wentworth.
Thank you. Paul, just one quick question and a quick comment. With regard to the tiptoe overlay, I assume that you've been in contact with the management at San Carlos Airport and they're aware of all this. As you know, any approach on the left is very tight with their traffic patterns, and especially their entries, and with their with their lack of having a federal control tower, it's not always as smooth going as sometimes the procedures would like to be. So I assume you've connected with them. They've been involved in the updates as needed. And I think they would benefit from knowing when, if you're going to do a trial, a united trial of this, of knowing when it's going to happen, because it's going to be a surprise, maybe a little bit.
So great question, and I think I can give maybe two answers. One answer, but two different parts. The flight procedure subcommittee that's been working to evaluate how to convert the tiptoe visual flight procedure into an instrument flight procedure, that does not involve the San Carlos Airport. There is, in parallel to our project and our looking at Group 1 Innovative Approach Procedures, an open publication date for changes to the current visual flight procedure for the tiptoe. I think it's set to publish in January of 22. So some of the crossover, some of the folks that participate in our subcommittee as a part of the project team, they are also actively working on kind of the other airport coordination for what those changes might look like for the tiptoe specifically. So I can't say I've spoken with San Carlos about what those changes might look like, but I do know that as an example, we've had stakeholders from the TRACON and the flight procedures team involved in our subcommittee. So I don't know for sure that they've talked with them, but I assume that's part of their outreach. I can say that the conversion of the community flight procedure packages that we've put out for consideration now reflect the desired changes that are being worked on for the January update to the visual flight procedure itself. That's kind of part 2. And there's actually a part 3, which is we won't be requesting for United Airlines to evaluate that tiptoe procedure. What we're looking at United Airlines evaluating is very specific to the existing RNAV GPS approach to 28 right, and then seeing what happens if the aircraft just comes in a little bit higher in that section from Eddy to side-by into Seapan. But I'll take a note about San Carlos and definitely bring it back to our flight procedure subcommittee stakeholders to see what level of FAA interaction there's been on that one.
Yeah, I think that would be important. It would be a shame if we waited till January to get some input from them and it was something that was significant. I mean, it's pretty much an overlay, so I don't expect it to, but I think we ought to not overlook that.
Got it. I'll take the note. Thank you.
And my other comment had to do with your questions and answers on the website, which is a great document. Really enjoyed reading through it and your answers. I just would suggest a really couple of things on that, and that is that it would be helpful if we, and I know it's on the website as a PDF, and I understand that's probably the simplest way to put it on a website, but it would be really interesting if we could sort by date. I mean, I really don't care what the question was in 2018. That's probably been covered many of times since then. Maybe sort by category, what am I most interested in finding out what the public is interested in? Maybe by venue related, is this as a result of the City of Palo Alto meeting, or if it can be identified as such. And then maybe sort between answered and unanswered. So I can just go in and see what needs to be answered further. But it's a great resource. Thank you for that. Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you, Ms. Winworth. I appreciate the comments. And with that, let me just give one last opportunity for members based on the additional information. If you have any questions or comments before we close this item.
We've got Linda Woolen representing supervisor with her hand up.
Linda, Ms. Woolen, please.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hanna, I wonder if you could put up the slide that had that. I had a question about the noise monitors that showed the location of the noise monitors. So one was also a friendly suggestion. I think that's going to help if I can see it. That monitor number C, is that in the City of Palo Alto?
I have to defer to Bert on whether that's in Palo Alto or right on the border. Sorry.
Hey, Linda, it is right on the border of Los Altos and Palo Alto.
Okay, just as a suggestion, maybe include that in parentheses for folks that don't know the area or can't quite see on the map. And then the other question is regarding D and E and the TBD, or maybe we won't use them. Can you give us a little more color on that? Maybe that's a question for Bert.
it's quite simple. We put out the ask for sites for 2 meetings now. This is the 3rd, and we received 0 input. So no volunteers, and we're kind of have our hands tied about reaching back out to the community. So we've been sort of farming through current volunteers, the city staff, and we haven't received any people willing to volunteer yards. Been reaching out to businesses that might be decent candidates in those areas and not finding any viable so far. So at this point, looks like we're going to go with A, B, C, and F. And if we can pick up a site at D and E, that would be gravy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, then I'm ready to move on to item number 1C. Is there final call? Any questions? Then I will move on to item number 1C, which is SFO noise monitoring threshold evaluation, noise threshold waiver, and revised noise monitoring program. And we'll give Bert 15 minutes for his presentation. So earlier in the year, the airport changed the vendor and the software for their noise measurement devices, and many questions have been raised about that. So we are giving SFO the opportunity to respond to some of the many questions. And with that, I will pass it on to Bert.
Hi there. It's quite simple, really. We don't need the full 15 minutes. We can save your time there. But the long and the short of it is, the state of California requires, when you do update your noise monitoring system, that you go ahead and certify thresholds, and those that are at the endpoints of your noise contour, meaning at the very points. And so we went ahead and looked at 12 sites. We did 2 different stages on looking at these. We wanted the ones that were obviously the endpoints, and then we wanted ones that fleshed out the sides of the contour. And so we went ahead and did the additional sites to come up with the 12 that we have in our 2 reports. We're right now consolidating the 2 reports into one with a cover memo that we'll plan to send to the state of California. Caltrans Division Aeronautics requesting waivers from the threshold, which, as you folks may recall from previous meetings, if you read into Title 21, it says 10 decibels below the noise level, which is 65. And so while it doesn't say 55 decibels in there, that is what the expected threshold would be. And most of you are fairly aware that the general area that we have our monitors in here is a somewhat busy area and has noise levels above 55 decibels. When you look at Site 1, for example, right off the end of the runways in San Bruno near Highway 101 and 380, you can imagine that it's not a quiet suburban area. It's a very hopping area that is fairly robust with some noise, in addition to aircraft. And so to capture the aircraft noise adequately, you want to have the threshold set so that the aircraft are not blending in with the community. You have some differentiation there. And the hope would be 10 decibels, let's say, but not always the case. And so what we looked for and requested our consultants to go ahead and analyze the data and see what would give us the best capture of the number of aircraft without losing any. You also need to keep in mind too that when you have a high noise event level, it will pretty much be the one that drives the value for that site, whereas multiple quiet ones could be lost in the background. And so it's why the threshold works out for us there. We looked at newer methodologies for doing this. We used to use a noise to track matching, meaning that when you have a noise event, you then search out a track for it. We're looking at, well, not looking at, we have employed noise powered distance, or NPD, another threshold based measurement, using some of the finer points of what people have asked in the past that we look at, a NEAM, which is a method of matching aircraft with their noise power curves. And then on that one, a NEAM does not use a threshold. And with Title 21, we're required to have a threshold. And a NEAM is not accepted by California at this time, so we don't use it. We had considered getting it approved for use in California, and know that will take some time. And rather than sit on our hands and wait, we decided to go ahead and employ NPD, which does use a little of both and is more advanced than the old noise to track. So I think with that, we can open it up to any questions folks might have.
Okay, so Bert, just to put it in, simplify it for me.
Yes.
What we're saying is our methodology is governed by whatever Caltrans requires on the Title 21. Is that correct?
Both the federal and the state, yes.
Okay. Okay, so, and with that, now, could you make a comment? I think Ms. Israelite at the beginning made a few comments about the new monitors and the low frequency capability. And could you make a comment on that? I think you have before, but just remind me what our comment was.
Right. Our noise monitors are capable of picking up low frequency, A-weighted, typically low frequency, we're talking about C-weighted. And so when we do a specific study for C-weighted noise, we have to actually go back to the raw data, pull that out of the raw data, and then go ahead and create a reports. Ideally, going forward, if we're going to be measuring anything other than the A-weighted threshold based noise, which is what we're requested to do by federal and state, we would then want to maybe employ additional monitors possibly, or go back to the raw data and pull out what we have out of that.
So the monitors are capable of collecting the data. It's just a matter of us taking it, because right now we're not required to take it and we're not doing it for other reports. Is that correct?
Correct. Okay,
so if we wanted to do it, if we could talk about what that would entail and what additional cost that would create. So with that, I will open it to my, actually, let me go back to Mr. Rydell at HMMH. And I know that you reviewed the report, and I just wonder if you have any comments or any further questions for what Bert's comments.
I have no further questions, Bert. I think he covered it pretty well. I would just say that the reports, both phase 1 and phase 2, were reviewed by HMH at the request of the roundtable, and we see no issues with the requested waivers and the particular threshold noise levels that they're recommending. My suggestion would be that you monitor that on a periodic basis. Things do change. You don't need to wait for the next time you upgrade your noise monitors to evaluate whether the thresholds are indeed set correctly. Maybe on the order of once a year or something like that. You just do a quick assessment to see that the threshold noise levels still adequately capture the noise, and ultimately determine the CNEL to help locate the endpoints of the 65 CNEL contour.
Thank you, Gene. With that, then I'll open it to my colleagues to see if there's any questions about the noise monitoring presentation. So colleagues, I see Terry's analog hand raised.
Thank you. Just BridgeNet also uses the other methodology for other airports. Is that correct?
BridgeNet is one of our consultants. And I'm not sure what you mean by BridgeNet uses. Any consultant can use any of the noise metrics that they need to determine whatever they need.
Well, my question is, I think that BridgeNet does the monitoring for some other airports that are using the searching for my words here, for the evaluating the noise based on the ANEEM level at some of the other airports.
I'm not aware if BridgeNet is. If you're
Through
asking
the chair, I think Member O'Connell means B and K regarding the names, not BridgeNet.
EnviroSuite, yes.
Okay.
If you're talking about EMS EnviroSuite, yes, they're our vendor for our system. And
Okay.
MWA, Metropolitan Washington International Airport, they are using ANEEM 100% for their system. And it's been quite good for them. Like I said, unfortunately, right now, we can't just jump over to ANEEM because it hasn't been certified in California yet due to the fact it does not use a threshold.
Okay. But wouldn't it be possible if we made a request that they may be able to put our data in at a pretty easily plug and play to see if that's going to give us different results for the noise?
There would be some additional costs for the analysis on it, sure. In fact, in the past, we have looked at that. And as we were going through fine tuning our system that we have right now and moving over to NPD versus noise to track, we did make darn certain that we were getting better noise to track matching than we had before. We knew what we had before was old tech, and we wanted to advance to the point where, okay, we're getting real good noise to track matching, and we're also getting accurate, fewer false positives, fewer false negatives. And so we wanted to make sure that this was the right choice for us. And we've done a lot of work and a lot of analysis and a lot of data grooming to check to make sure that we are. EnviroSuite has actually allowed one of their, well, not allowed, but brought back in at our request a previous staff member who does this, eats it for breakfast. Miles is his name, and he's actually quite good at it. He's an independent contractor now, and he's been verifying the data that we've been using.
Okay. And, you know, of course, my worry is that every plane, all the aircraft noise that doesn't spike a noise incident is going to be put into the background noise. So it just keeps building the background noise for all those missed incidents. So
we made sure that we were actually capturing those. The nice thing about what we're doing right now is we did have that in the past with the old methodology, with the new methodology, where we had a, let's say, a combined noise event where we had community and aircraft and or community and other airport aircraft. They really kind of just became somewhat community event. we made sure right now that we're actually separating those out. We're pulling what belongs to SFO into the SFO bin, what belongs to other airports into the other airports bin, and then what really belongs to community stays in the community bin.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that information.
Yes, ma'am. I might also add in the reports that we brought up, you can see where they actually slid forth, looking at if we raised or lowered thresholds, would we increase the counts of aircraft captured? And you can see that we were looking for a sweet spot there where we didn't blend into the community too much, and we could actually get good aircraft counts.
Great. Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Member O'Connell, for your questions. Vice Chair, do you have any questions for Bert on this issue?
I do not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I don't know if anybody else has any questions or any other comments. Michelle, I see your hand raised.
I had one question that I wanted to get Gene to talk about a little bit more that he had brought up, and it had to do with the linkage between the airport noise monitoring plan and the development plan and the Title 21 gaps as it relates to the opportunities that would be coming out of this report. In other words, this report addresses specific things in Title 21, but there is information in here that isn't required by Title 21, but may be of interest to us to look further into. One had to do with some of the discussion on the nighttime flight. Others was the details about the LMAX details. Could you just briefly speak about that, please?
Sure. I think Bert addressed some of that in his presentation, but basically what this waiver request document that San Francisco is producing is really to address requirements of Title 21 in terms of a noise monitoring system and its ability to provide the information that is sought after, and that is the location of the noise impact boundary, which is the 65 CNEL contour. So it's just a, if you will, a check the box type of procedure that the airport has to do when they upgrade their system in the way that they have. And so what is required is that San Francisco International Airport have on file with Caltrans a noise monitoring plan. And within that plan, any of the waivers that are required to the threshold noise level. So all that being said is that basically what the airport is doing right now is updating their monitoring plan and getting the acceptance of that plan, including the waivers from Caltrans. So there's really not much opportunity there for the roundtable to weigh in more than just review, and as I have done, reviewed the technical information that was analyzed by BridgeNet and reported by BridgeNet to see that the methodologies they implemented seem sound and appropriate, and their conclusions also appropriate as to what the threshold noise levels are. All that being said is that then what you end up with is a state accepted methodology for determining your noise impact boundary. And once you then have your noise impact boundary that's reported on a quarterly basis in the quarterly noise reports that San Francisco prepares, that is where you look at the opportunities of seeing, okay, here is our noise impact boundary. What work program items do we want to address, knowing the location of that, and what more can we be doing within that noise impact boundary to reduce the noise exposure of those individuals. So that's where, while this process doesn't give you much to do with except for to review it and agree or disagree with it, and I think we're in agreement with where they're headed at this point, but then it's to move on beyond Title 21 and try to find the opportunities to continue to work with the airport to find opportunities to reduce that noise exposure to individuals.
Michelle, you have some additional comment?
Nope, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. And then with that, I really want to save some time to open it for, I know there was comments from the public that were related to this, especially this last item. So I do want I want to wrap it up. So any members, you have any last questions, last comments on this item? And then with that, then we will move on to public comments on item number 1, which included the 3 presentations. So with that, Ms. Montes, please.
Thank you, Chair. We are now taking public comment for night hush, GPAS, or noise monitoring report item. As a reminder, if you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand through the Zoom feature. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. And Mr. Chairman, we did receive a slide from Ms. Peter Gray, so I'm going to share my screen and call on Mr. Peter Gray first.
Great.
Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Are you seeing my screen?
No. It says started screen sharing. Yes, we do now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I will now call on Mr. Peter Grace. Accept this request to unmute your microphone and begin speaking. I will be keeping the timer on my end. Thank you.
Mr. Grace, are you with us? Mr. Grace, you might be muted.
Yeah, Mr. Grace, can you, there we go.
I cannot see the whole of what I sent. Yeah, a much bigger page. Is there any way you can do so that we can see what's below noise monitors and event detection criteria?
You could scroll up, Angela, probably.
Well, yeah, but this
is as best as I can do. I'm sorry.
Okay, can you scroll?
You may proceed, Mr. Grace.
Can you scroll down at all, or are we stuck?
You're seeing the entire page because it's an 8.5 by 11. It's not in presentation mode. I can't scroll.
But I will say that this was distributed to the members ahead of time, just so you know.
Yeah, so we have it, Mr. Grace. We have the document. So if you want to make your comment, that would be great.
Okay, can I start?
Yes, please do.
Okay, thanks
Yes.
a lot. Thank you very much indeed. That's great. I'd like to spotlight the methodology presented in the threshold evaluation report and compared to another methodology used at Reagan and Dulles airports since 2015. As you can see, there are 3 bullet points in the middle about the number of technical challenges with the threshold and duration method. I realized from Bert what's saying is that Title 21 is forced to use the threshold method. However, I'd still like to highlight this other methods being used at Reagan and Dulles airports. And the problem with the threshold and duration method, as outlined, is quieter aircraft do not satisfy noise vent criteria, but citizens on the ground still hear. Secondly, there's problem with noise contamination for community sites, which is what Bert and Gina was discussed. And this more interesting one, lowering the noise threshold does not account for increased background noise levels. What this methodology provides a more accurate detection method. And this is what it says in the, I'd like to be able to show it. It says on this page, this method provides a more accurate detection methodology for distinguishing aircraft noise from other noise experienced in neighboring communities. The same company, EnviroSuite, manages both the monitors at SFO and the Reagan and Dulles airports. So I've got 2 questions. Bert, could you remind us how many Title 21 monitors there are that we're discussing and how many non-Title 21 monitors there are? My second question is, why can't the SFO noise office use the more accurate methodology here at SFO in the director's report, and specifically for the non-Title 21 monitors? Thank you. 2 questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Bert, I'll give you a few minutes to respond to Mr. Grace's questions.
Thank you, sir. Happy to. As far as how many Title 21, well, currently, if you look at the quarterly report, we have basically one that's within the Title 21 contour due to the size of it right now. But I'll say 3 due to the fact that we have the endpoints being one out the gap, one behind the airport, and one towards Foster City. The one over the bay doesn't count, so that would be 3. We're overdoing it by asking for 12. I don't think the state's gonna balk on that ask. They didn't last time, so it should be a pretty easy go with it, and that's the reason I went for that. Let's see, the other one, oh shoot, what was your last question, Mr. Grace? I was trying to write it down and got put on the hot seat.
Bert,
Sorry, Bert.
he was asking if you could use the others that are non-Title 21
Yes, thank you.
required
Yes,
and use
yes,
the
yes.
other method.
Thank you, Gene. All right, so unfortunately, when you do what you do, you have to commit with our system. When you go aneem, you go aneem. I do know that Reagan was doing a test where they had some that were, some that weren't. We had a similar method by reprocessing afterwards. So they would create a separate computer environment, copy the data over, and then process that all as aneem when we looked at it. And so one of the things that I found, and it's coming around where you can use multiple in the future, but right now you kind of have to pick one and commit to it and process with that. So we're all NPD right now, which, like I said, uses some of the finer points of aneem, and we don't use the noise to track any longer.
Okay, thank you, Bert, and thank you, Mr. Grace, for your comments. Did we have any further public comment? And I thought we have somebody who spoke at the beginning who had questions about GBAS. Does that?
Yes, Chair, we do have 3 more hands raised, so I will next call on Miss Darlene Yapley, followed by Miss Mary Jo Fremont. Miss Yapley, please accept this request to unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Yes, the agenda item is analyze noise monitor methodology. There was not a distinction between Title 21 and not Title 21. I will do more research given the comment that was made that you cannot use some monitors for anemes and you can use some for anemes. So I think the request here, and again, I will do more research because this was a new data point. The research is, I believe you can do some monitors anemes and some not. I believe that you can do Title 21 cannot be anemes because that's required by law, which I completely support. But I think our bigger discussion, given the quantity of monitors that are above the quantity 1 to 3 that Bert mentioned, that is on the director's report, which is 20-30 monitors, can use anemes. And the reason why this is important, and I know this is true for ground-based noise, arrivals and departures, is that we want accuracy of the count. And when you make arbitrary numbers, it's 8 seconds, 6 seconds, you know, even how did you pick 8 seconds to determine an airplane event? The better way to do it is base it on the noise and relate it to what is overhead, which is an actual aircraft. Then you don't have to get into all the issues about the ambient noise and the number of seconds for duration. You have an accurate correlation of the noise to the event. And that's what is so important, is that we capture the events accurately. So I hope that everyone here wants accurate counting of events, because if we do need to use the technology that has been there since 2015. This is not leading edge technology. This is 2015 that it was first started to be used. So again, I will do some research based on Bert's comment just now, but I encourage us to follow up on this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yapley.
I will now
And
call
we-
on Ms. Mary Jo Fremont, followed by Jennifer. Ms. Fremont, please accept this request to unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Thank you. It's a comment on the GBAS Group 1 innovative approaches. So my first question is whether the roundtable will make recommendations to SFO, and if so, when are you planning to make them, and how will you make your recommendations? For instance, will you ask your technical consultant to review all the community packages? In other words, if the roundtable makes recommendations on Group 1, what process will you use to arrive at these recommendations? My second comment is about the 5-year time frame for the Group 2 approaches that Paul Hanna mentioned. 2.5 years ago, we were told it would take 5 years. Therefore, it should only take about 2.5 years from today to implement Group 2 approaches and not another 5 years. So could you please confirm that Group 2 target was 5 years from the late 2018, early 2019, not 5 years from today? Can we please use calendar years and not timeframes that just continue to slip? And my third comment is about noise metrics. Today, SFO reports the SEL metric in the community packages, but they don't report LMAX. So there's a big difference. SEL is the total noise of the event over the total duration, the 30 seconds or so. So when you have a change, when they show -3 dB for an ECL level, it's -3 dB over 30 seconds. That's on average a 1/10 of a dB. The LMAX is the peak noise. And the thing is, the modeling tool reports LMAX, not just SEL. They can just check mark this. And at the beginning, SFO reported LMAX on some innovative approaches, but then they switched to SEL. So to understand if people will really hear the noise changes, we need to see LMAX, not just SEL. So will SFO report LMAX in addition to SEL in each community package? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fremont. I will now call on Jennifer. And after that, I do not see any hands raised, Chair. So Jennifer, please accept this request to unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Thank you. Just a favor, please, that always put GBAS as the acronym, even though I hate acronyms when discussing GBAS, because I missed that GBAS was on the agenda when I saw ground-based all spelled out. So putting GBAS will help just for any searches as well. Also, regarding GBAS questions, the date of when the questions were asked really matters for those of us who have been asking the questions since 2018, and there have been no responses until just recently, and I won't say that the questions have been answered. I'm focused on the major federal actions that are going to be published in December. You have been notified. The Sfo Roundtable has apparently chosen to distinguish between overlays and innovative. But I would encourage you to, at the very minimum, require the FAA to provide a report on their noise screening. Noise screening is a very big mystery. We have heard things like, for example, with Pirate, that Pirate was published with 1 day's data from an airline. And then there are screenings that are a full report. I will send you as a reference one that was written for Phoenix. But the standard, the statute is for you to compare threshold levels to establish if there's going to be a significant or reportable impact. I believe that it would be incumbent upon you to at least have transparency, full transparency on how the noise screening is being done and all the steps that are going to be happening in order to call this a CADEX. I know that it's being called as a test drive and all of that, but these are permanent procedures. They're major federal actions. And I urge you to please focus on the NEPA standard, which is really the best way that people are represented, because the standard is not for you to be made aware of these things. It's for the public to be made aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, I believe you had a comment that was a written comment that was submitted.
We did receive a written comment from Mayor Schneider, and she had a conflict because she was going to the League of California Cities meeting today, and it was on the agenda item for the noise monitoring methodology, and she was concerned that the report that was submitted made the conclusion that noise was quieter because of newer planes and retiring older planes, but that her understanding was that much of this was not it is my understanding that it's only in flight noise and not when jets are using maximum thrust to get off the ground and climb. The people under the gap departure are experiencing the noise during the climb, and that includes low frequency noise and vibrations. The larger planes that use gap departure might be quieter at 30,000 feet or on arrivals, but they are quieter as they climb from 28L. And then she referenced some specific sites. So she's concerned that the CNEL does not address ground-based noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, and Mr. Graves, this is the example of why we don't have the time to do the back and forth. We have 3 minutes left, and there was some very good issues brought up, and I'm sorry that we don't have the time to comment on them. But there's a lot of commentary about the methodology, and so I think that we may need to add it to our future agenda items so we can respond to some of the issues that are raised as far as. And I think the most compelling one to me was the one, because Title 21 requires us to report it one way. Why can't we still report it in another way for other purposes? So I think we need to talk about that one a little more. So I'm going to recommend that one as a future agenda topic, and I just open it for anybody else who has any future agenda topics.
And Chair, that is identified under item 2, future topics, A number 2, for looking at new monitoring methodology for the director's report.
Excellent, good. I'm glad. Yeah. So just for the members of the public who commented on that item, we are still talking about it. We are hearing your comments, and we'll try to get some questions answered. Any other future agenda items that anybody would like to propose? And having none, do we have any final comments from my colleagues or from any other of the representatives of the representatives? I don't see any raised hands. So with that, unless Michelle, you have anything for me, I'm getting ready to adjourn.
I do not.
Very good. Well, thank you all for being here. And again, it's just an hour and a half. We could go on and on and on, but we have to cut it at some point. So I apologize for rushing and for not being able to do a little more back and forth. But with that, I want to thank everybody who participated today. And I think we get some great information, and we had some great questions that we will address at future meetings. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you at the next one.